Hello, everybody out there in podcast land. It's me, Rudrani Devi. Yes, again, I know, and the crowd goes wild. With the Get Happy podcast. Yay, thanks for joining us. Let's do this, y'all. And today I have my fabulous new friend, Jacquie Carter, with me. She is a certified bars facilitator. She is also a facelift facilitator and a body processes facilitator. And without further ado, Jacquie, hello. Thank you so much for joining us, and tell our listeners a little bit, and those of you watching, of course, on YouTube, a little bit about who you are, what you do, all the things.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me. And it's so nice to meet you. Thank you. I live in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada, right in the smack middle. And I am a massage therapist, registered massage therapist for the last 27 years. And pardon?
I said, oh my heavens.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever done any one thing for that long.
Well, I've incorporated a lot of different varieties along the way, and which has been really helpful, because when you did the straight soft tissue work, that can burn you out no time at all. So as I added different modalities and got more into the energy type work and things like that, it was so much easier and gentler on my body. And I always knew something else was possible. I am and have always been the type of therapist who, you put your hands on some shoulders and all of a sudden I'd end up asking them a question about something else or that. So I always knew early on how interconnected the body and the emotions or the thoughts and all that have always been. So that's kind of where I've been.
So you're a body whisperer.
I think so. Yes. When Dane first started speaking about that, I was like, yes. I love that book. It's an amazing book. And it's
so just a little quick plug for Dr. Dane here, who is the co-founder of Access Consciousness. He has recently released this book called Body Whispering, and it's an amazing book. So don't get it. And
don't. No.
Obviously, Jacquie is a master at it. So if someone were to come see you, what would that look like? Do you talk to their bodies? Do they tell you what's up?
You know what? When it gets broken down, it's like, oh, does their body talk to you? It almost gets more confusing for me in a way, because I think it's just something I've automatically done and been aware of. So the more I try and separate it and peel it apart, the more I can get in my head about it, versus someone will show up and something will come out of my mouth. And so I'm just kind of aware of it and how it's all sitting together or where they've stored it. And the easiest way I've always shared it is the easy one where we go, okay, stress. We know where stress sits. It's like, oh, somebody touches your shoulders. Oh, you must be stressful. Okay, well, where does anger, where does fear, acknowledging that they're distractor implants, but in this reality, we attach so much to the emotion.
Right.
So where do we store all that other stuff in our body? And so as I explore that with people, that's really cool, the stuff that can change.
I love that. So when did you first discover Access, and how did that change your business?
I think it's been about 6+ years for me. I discovered it. I think I'd heard about it a little bit in the background, the whispers in the background, like, oh, that sounds cool. But 6+ years ago, my whole world turned upside down when my ex-husband at the time says like, I'm not happy anymore, and literally packed up and took off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
what a gift. He didn't bring it out for another 10, 15, 20 years.
Totally. And at the time, I thought my whole world turned upside. Well, it did. It turned my whole world upside down. And then Access appeared. And I just started choosing class after class after class. And it was such a gift for me. And I now totally look at my whole divorce as such a gift. I'm so grateful. He chose it, because if from that place and space I'm not sure I would have chose it. So him choosing it and, being at what felt like the effect of was such a gift. I'm so grateful.
I love it. So you said and I was the same way. I took the bars class and then I was hooked. Access bars. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it's a modality, 32 points in the head that when you touch them, it's like a gentle touch, deletes thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you've either aligned and agreed with or resisted and reacted to. And Gary Douglas, who is the founder of Access Consciousness, actually channeled this information. And so we have now this fabulous modality. And for me, once I took that class, I was like, okay, I'm hooked. What else? What else? And I was just voracious about it. And I remember the thing that really changed my point of view. This is what I'm curious, so I'm kind of setting you up here. Is when I discovered what a superior asshole I had been, because here I was, this meditation teacher, and you had to do it a certain way. And I had all these points of view about what enlightenment was and all these things. And I realized just from that bars class that it's not a one size fits all. And what I loved was the teacher basically telling me, you know, not to listen to her, that I had my own knowing. And I thought, oh my gosh, I really have been impaling my knowing onto other people.
I was a master at that. Yes.
Oh my gosh. So that was the thing that got me. And I thought, okay, I've got to undo that. I've got to create something different. And that's when my journey just exploded when it came to access. So what was it for you?
You know, there's some similarity for sure. Most of my life, it was people would come to me looking for advice or something like that. So I had this awareness, but where it changed for me is empowering others to know that they had their awareness, and also that how aware I was meant I was aware of everybody's world too. So all the places I thought I was a shit show or wasn't working for me wasn't mine.
Right.
And that was one of the greatest gifts. Something else that, you know, if we look at other modality, or something that had always been shared with me, is that, oh, you're so sensitive. You're very sensitive. Mm-hmm. And something Access shared to me was from, like, you're very aware, which felt very empowering to me. When someone said I'm very sensitive, I took that as a weakness or a wrongness or something I couldn't handle or be in this world. Yeah. Versus an awareness felt like, oh yeah, I got this. I can, yeah. So that little nugget there changed so much for me.
I mean, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting because it's like that. I just want to get this stuff in there. It's like, you guys, a lot of times what you've considered your wrongness is actually your strongness. Absolutely. And I love the way Jackie is saying, you know, okay, so here I was always being told I was sensitive. For me, it was, you know, she's touched, because I could see and hear things that nobody else apparently could. And so they said, well, you know, she's touched. And the way they would say it, it always sounded like there was concern. You know, I thought,
she's special.
oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. And, you know, I love that you mentioned that, because there's so many people out there in the world that they're not willing to be themselves because of all these judgments they've received. And what if you guys could just look at that as a strongness? What if you were different and that was okay? And what if that's what the world was looking for, was your talent abilities?
Yeah, absolutely. That, again, part of Access, that wrongness is a strongness. And even this morning, I got this, like, what if I chose beyond the judgments of me? Because those are just the limitations I've put in place of me. Like, it was, you know, you hear it, but there was something in the shower this morning where all enlightenment happens.
I get some of my best ideas either on the treadmill or in the shower. Totally.
I just need to find waterproof pen and paper to write them down. But yeah, it was like, oh, this is, you know, so even, for example, even being invited to have this conversation with you, my initial reaction was, oh, I can't do this. I don't fit into this, I don't belong in this line, and whatever that story was. And I'm like, oh, what if I chose beyond that? What if I chose beyond that? And what if that's not true? And what if the invitation was someone else seeing something in me that I've decided really, you know, is there or isn't there, or whatever that looks like. So I'm sorry if I derailed a little bit. I just wanted to share that piece.
No, I love it. Actually, you know, it's interesting you said that, because I can't tell you how many times I've had people come up to me years after I've said something and tell me that this throwaway line or whatever, like maybe I taught a class and I thought, well, only 3 or 4 people showed up, obviously this, whatever. And they'll say, oh my gosh, it changed my world. For example, the beginning of the lockdown. So we're talking March 2020-ish. I had planned on teaching all over the world, which is what I was doing. And now more of it online, obviously. But I had a gal reach out to me almost, I'm trying to think now, I guess it was the beginning of the year. And she told me that because of this one call I was on, and it was just a 90-minute call in India. So it was their timeline. There was a gal that had been to my house when I was hosting another CF for a 3-day body class. And she said, I became a certified facilitator because of that call. And I became a relationships done different facilitator because I found out that you had done that. And, she goes, there was just something about the invitation that you be. Because when you get so exuberant about your life and your living, people perceive that energy. It's not something you're trying to.
You're not doing, you're just being it. Yes.
You're embodying it. And that's the gift. That's the whole thing about, even with the class I teach, Right Voice for You, is, being that invitation, is being the energy of it.
Yeah. Which is such an exact opposite of how I was brought up. It was do, it was achieve, it was, have to, should, supposed to's. And access for me has been just that, the invitation to just be. What if all of that just dropped away and you were just you? And so that's part of what keeps me coming back, is like, oh, I get little snippets of like, oh, this is actually me. Oh, okay, this is actually, feels light and real and creates more space in my world. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I love that. And and you guys, it's so much harder not to be you. I've discovered
totally takes a shit ton of work.
We've been trained to believe that that's what we're supposed to do. But once you can actually relax into being yourself, oh my goddess, then your life really does come to you with ease and joy and glory, which is the mantra of access. Even the tough stuff, y'all. Even the cranky pants stuff, because you have these amazing tools, you can navigate your life through it. So, okay. So what is one of your favorite tools of access consciousness? Just curious.
I would say the who does it belong to is my go-to. As again, I shared that just that awareness is what I play with. This, like, even the bitchy, is this my bitchy, or am I aware of somebody else bitchy in the world? And just wording it that way, or am I aware of that way, just creates so much more space for me. And I just keep playing with it. Also, I'd like to add, in the beginning, it felt like this long list of tools that I had to figure out how to do. And the more I played with them, the more I just realized I just become them. You just become interesting point of view. It just becomes this like, oh, is this actually my whatever? Oh, no, okay, and carry on. But it's not something I need to remember to do. And that just took time.
No, I get it. I remember teaching a bars class, and we had 14 people in the house, wearing our masks. It's so weird. It was a weird time.
Yeah.
And my mom was shocked that there were that many people that actually showed up. And I was like, people are searching for this stuff. And so I kind of told a story on my family, and my mom was right there. And so after everybody leaves, she said, oh, I couldn't believe that you told them this about our family and all the things. And I said, well, I don't really have a point of view about it. And if I can create more by giving them an example and use myself, I don't have a problem with it. But it made me realize how much that's taboo in this reality, and how much I had moved away from those points of view. And you guys, you've heard me say this several times, your point of view creates your reality. Your reality does not create your point of view. And so my point of view in those 10 seconds were, okay, I'm going to share a story from when I used to believe that my reality created my point of view, and how I got out of it.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty amazing acknowledgement for myself to have my mother point it out to me, because I'm like, wow, I have really become the tools. Because in the past, you don't tell people these things. You just,
because you have a point of view about it still.
Right. A
And then
judgment.
once you don't have the point of view, there's so much more space and ease with it, because it can just be like, that's one of the things that I've gotten the most out of Access as well, is just the ease. And you can tell where people share their stories from, and there's really vulnerable, in this reality, horrific, tragic stories, as you know, like, and just where they move beyond them and become something different, or it just doesn't have that charge in their world anymore.
Right.
That's where you can just share with so much ease. And that's what I've noticed about myself too. Even my divorce, right? It was like that asshole, that asshole, that asshole. It's like, oh, cool. There's so much space with it. It just doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, it's funny how people hold on to their stories, because even my mother likes to tell the story about, oh, you know, she's a survivor and she was in India and she got 3 bullets and all this, and then her husband left her and da da da. And then I always pop in and go, and I'm so grateful he did. You know?
Right. Yeah.
He just looks at me. The thing that really floors people, when I was doing the book signings for my first book, Soul Survivor, that I would say something along the lines of, those terrorists did me a favor.
Yeah. Because
it got me out of a bad marriage, out of a bad business partnership that I had, where I was doing all the work. I mean, I had to stop everything because I couldn't walk. You know, I had to get better. I had to shut the clinic down, all the things. And it gave me a lot of introspection. And that's when I really started diving back into Access, because I'd first heard about it in 2003.
Okay.
But it wasn't until, and then what happened in India was 2008. And I worked on healing and I used some tools, but I wasn't really invested in Access just yet. So then like in 2011, I was like, okay, where's that clearing statement? You know,
right.
I remember that working. So I'm gonna, and then like you know, you just never know. It was a bad divorce also.
Yeah.
Bad, good. I'm grateful for that divorce. Oh my God.
So grateful.
And I was ready to let him go too.
Yeah.
Really was. Because I already knew, I had already tried to divorce him a couple of times before and he wouldn't allow it. But once I was broken, then he was willing. Because his boss actually told me that she asked about me one day and he said, well, the beloved isn't perfect anymore. And I was like, wow. He actually said that to you? She goes, yeah. And that's when I realized what an asshole he was, because he was making you out to be the asshole, you know, gaslighting me.
Yeah.
And all the things. So very interesting. So interesting point of view, you guys. It's an amazing tool. And it's basically looking at any situation to get yourself out of it. And instead of going, you know, wow, that person is really loud or whatever it is, you go, interesting point of view. I have that point of view that this person's loud. Interesting point of view that I have a problem with this. Interesting point of view. And then the more, or, you know, if you're engaging with somebody, I'm not loud, I'm just expressive. And you can go into interesting point of view. They have that point of view. Interesting point of view. They have that point of view about my point of view. And the thing about it is it kind of takes you out of it. So you're not invested anymore. Yeah. And that's where you lighten your load. So that's what that tool is about, you know.
I'd also like to add to that too. You know, when we talk about, say, for example, the divorces or, you know, your, experience, whatever we want to call, is like some way, somewhere, I was asking for that. Like I was asking for a different experience and this is how it showed up. So that's the other golden nugget that I received from Access, is it never shows up the way you think it's going to, ever. True. And if we didn't attach all the, well, this is wrong, or this is right, or this is good, or this is bad, then it's like, okay, well, what actually is this, and what's available here? And it's just something so sweet.
Well, and I want to add to that as well, because it's kind of like this, you guys. I love it when a client comes to me and say, this happened to me.
Yes.
They get stuck in that beyonds. And I'm like, well, I don't know. It's like the person who gets fired from a job they hated.
Yes.
You know, you got to realize, you guys, everything that happens in your life is a co-creation. The universe is hearing you loud and clear, whether you hear yourself or not. Be careful of your words. Be careful.
Well, it's very empowering too, to acknowledge that you create it all. So it's like, you can get more clear on what you'd actually like to create.
Like right now, I have a client who has a daughter who's in volleyball and is looking at it as possibly a career move, and was doing really well, was placed in a position evidently, and I don't know a whole lot about volleyball. I've played it, but I don't really know much about, where things stack in, but she's like a year younger than some of these girls and is placed in a position that's normally she wouldn't be considered for until the next year. And then she had an injury and a concussion. And then from that point forward, things have been going backwards for her. And I've been having this conversation with her mother, namely via text. We've done a couple of consultations and basically going, hey, we all create what goes on in our world. And I even used the example about being shot by terrorists. I said, I was in a situation where I was running constantly. I had all these PTSD systems in place even before getting shot by, my business has got to do this and I've got to da, 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 da. And I was constantly going and going and going and going. And, the joke about the terrorists did me a favor. I said, I co-created it and I wouldn't give it back now. Would I have consciously chosen it? Well, I'm not an idiot. Probably not,
Right.
But when I look back on it in hindsight, that creation created so much more in my world. I said, what if she knows something?
Yeah.
What if it's something that's going to drive her further, make her decide if this is something she really wants to do? Because her parents are both very athletic. Who knows where it's coming from? Or maybe she'll see that it's not for her. I said, but everything that shows up in our life, we've created.
Yeah.
We've created. That's what's so perfect about this universe. Ask and you shall receive, even when you're unaware of what you're asking for.
Totally. Yes. Yeah.
And it gives you that space of choice.
Yep.
Hey, this is going on. What am I creating here? Do I want to out-create myself? Do I want to choose something different? And being in the question, asking, because a lot of people don't even know they can ask. They feel like they're stuck and they can't move any further. But asking, that's when you get the ball rolling,
And asking for right now versus, sometimes we like, well, what's your goal? What's the end game? And then we get frozen because it's like, well, shit, I don't know what I want for breakfast. And it's
right.
So it's like, just like, oh, what right now would be fun for you? Okay. And just those, and with the awareness of like a lightness and fun and ease and getting more clarity of what you'd like to create without making it way down the road. Because I think that can freeze us right up.
I love something Simone Millis has said, who's one of my favorite certified facilitators in access consciousness. She's like, what time is it? It's now.
Yes.
Instead of being in that space of always,
yes,
having to look at your plans.
Yes.
And, if you're one of those people that are very pragmatic, which I'm sure none of us are, I've had an issue with this myself, if you want to call it that. I always ask the question, well, if I choose this, what will it create? Will it create greater? If I actually don't choose it, what could it create? Would that create greater? And then if I really am stuck in my, I'm head tripping beyond compare, which I'm sure none of you do. I'll ask, if I choose this, what will my life be like in 5 years? Mm-hmm. And even if it doesn't go the way I'd like, and I end up choosing something else, I find that choice brought me to the next choice that I wouldn't have even considered.
Right.
That kind of knowing. And it's so cool when you can actually know that I don't stress about it. Usually I get in my hot tub every morning, and this morning my body was like, no, we're not going to do that this morning. So I'm contributing to the earth in a different way. And what ends up happening is within 5 minutes of when I would have gone out, we had a torrential downpour. There's the whisperings of the earth going, not today.
Yeah. And it's without making it significant, right? It's just like, oh, do I want to have a hot tub right now? And then going, oh, cool. Like for me, if I followed the initial excitement or lightness, then like that's usually works better for me than if I start asking too many questions. I can really get in my head really quickly about it too. So I have to be aware of that too for me. Yeah.
Sure. I know what you mean. It's more head tripping. I think that's what I hear you saying. Because it's like a child who's constantly asking questions and you're like, stop asking questions. Why, mommy? Or why this? Or can we have that? Or do we,
Or what, or did you actually ask the question and it looked a little different than you thought it was? You know, like follow the lightness and the expansion and the knowing of it, right? Before stopping and going, well, is that true? Is this actually light for me? Will this actually create, you know, that's what I'm referring to, is when there's actually is space with it.
You know, can you give us an example of that? Because I get where you're going. It's a very subtle difference, you guys, like maybe a time in your life when.
For example, I play with it with classes. If a class comes up and I'll be like, yes. And it's just that yes. And I'll just follow it. And I'll notice if I'm like, well, shouldn't I? Oh my God, how much is that going to cost? Then I'll head trip about it, versus if I just paid attention to the yes, that was my body, that was my awareness. Then my head kicks in after going, shouldn't you? Like, that's a lot of money. Well, you get, what would it be like in 5 years? Like, well, what kind of 5 years? You know, like I can trip myself out with stuff like that.
Sure. You know, I think I have an example that could also speak to that. I just got back from the beach, and my mother and I were walking towards the boardwalk, and all of a sudden I see this beautiful car. And I looked at it and I went, oh, that's a Bentley. Wow. That's a beautiful Bentley. My body got really excited. Yeah. And I'm always doing this out loud, you know, I mean, it's convertible, light blue, like the sky, just gorgeous. And, you know, it has a wooden dash and all that. And I love beautiful cars. I've always had really nice cars. I have a really nice car now. I have a beautiful Mercedes. It's my second Mercedes. Not that that's the only car I ever do, but I always pay attention to how my body does this thing. So yeah. I said, what will it take for me to create this car or something like it in my life? And I swear, 30 seconds later, this guy is walking up with his daughter, and he looks at the car and he looks at me admiring the car. I guess he got the energy of it. And he says, you know, you can get one of these pretty easily in this part of, because we were near Boca Raton. And I said, yeah, they go for what, about 150,000? He goes, yeah, but you can get them for about 55,000 used. I saw one the other day that only had 22,000 miles on it, and you can get it for 55. And I went, oh, and my body swelled even more, yeah. You know, because here I just threw out the question, and then this guy comes up and gives me information. And I said, that's less than what I paid for my Mercedes. And he's like, yeah, you actually could. So all of a sudden in my world, I realized that I could create that. And normally I would have been going, okay, so where would I pull the money from? Da, 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 da. But instead, yep. I went to the space of, hey, that's available for me if I choose it.
I did the same thing with a car. Exactly. On an Infinity. I'm like, oh, I think this would be fun. I made a phone call, just like planted a seed, then went for a drive. It happened to be a lot, stopped. He's like, oh, well, we have one. So he sent me off in this blue one or whatever. And I come back and I said, this is nice, but I'd really like white, and I'd like lower kilometers, and maybe, and he goes, I have one over here with 22,000 kilometers. Doctor's wife sat in the garage. They didn't use it. Blah, blah, blah. So that, and then I said, I had a number in my head, and I'm like, okay, well, this is the number I'm willing to pay. And it was within $500 or something. And they threw in extra, like, it was just so easy and so light. And there was no head tripping. It was just so fun and giddy. And I didn't stop to think about, well, can I afford this? Should I do this? What?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's funny because I have almost the same story with my Mercedes. I went looking for a car. The first car that I test drove was a Mercedes. And I went and looked at an Infinity and all the really nice, because it was like nice car row in Knoxville, where my mother used to live or close to. And I told him, I said, I can't take the first car I drive. I'm sorry, I just can't do it. Of course, there's my head tripping.
Yep.
And so the next morning we went out and I test drove all these, Porsche and whatever. And then I said, Mom, I really like that Mercedes. And it was a white one because I wanted white also. I said, but I don't like the black interior. I wonder if they have one with tan interior. So we go back and he's like looking for one with tan interior everywhere. And then they realize they have one in storage at their facility. It was still wrapped in plastic, didn't even have 10 miles on it. Nice. And when they brought it out to me, it still had some of the plastic on it because they've got to detail it and do all kinds of things to get it ready. And I got in it, and it actually, my whole body, it was so funny. It's like my bum felt so much better in the same car, but it was the one with the tan interior. Yep. And it was less money. And of course they wanted to make sure that I bought it that day. So he dropped it another $5,000. And I was like, okay, sure. Twist my arm. So it ended up being less than what I wanted, had been willing to pay. And it had, like, for you, all the extra bells and whistles.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to, you know, something you said about, well, I can't buy the first one. How often do we do that? Like, how much is that our knowing where it's just like this lights? I've done that so many times. It'd be like, this lights me up, but then I'll entertain myself with so many others because that was too easy. That was so easy to just find that first one that was perfect, great deal. Like, if that's that easy, what am I missing? I must be missing something.
Well,
it's happening that easy.
I will say this, I must have had an awareness because when I actually showed up the next day, they were so excited and they gave me an even better deal than what they were offering me the day before. So
yeah, for
I
sure.
had something going on there. So I'm not going to make myself wrong for it. And I got to enjoy driving some other luxury cars that just didn't turn my body on.
Yeah.
And so I had that knowing as well. I was like, okay, that is smart for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a difference between awareness and versus it can't be that easy.
Right.
Can't be that easy. It can't show up. And I'm not saying you've done that. I'm saying in the past, I've done that when it's been super easy, or I'll just have a thought and next thing I'll go somewhere and it's like right there. It's like, oh, that's so easy. What am I missing? There must be something different or better, or, you know, whatever that looks like.
You know what though? We equate sometimes easy as not being fun or of value.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Hey, this is too easy for me. So it must not be of any value whatsoever.
Right.
You know, it's like doing these intuitive consultations, or when I talk to people on the other side, I just assumed everybody could do it. And then, you know, so I never charged for it. And then all of a sudden I realized what a valuable commodity that was, and that people would pay some good money for that. You know, and so I had to acknowledge that was actually a talent and ability that I was willing to step into.
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah, that was another thing that I received from Access too, is just that awareness, like those things that are super, super easy for you, the things that you think you can't charge for or shouldn't charge for are actually, when you're most being you.
Indeed. Wow. So I have to ask you this question. You know, this little yellow book, Choosing Happiness, that was the beginning of this whole podcast, Get Happy, right? My friend Trent Denson actually was the one that said, you have to have a podcast. You have to. And I would never wanted to do one. Everybody was always like, you should do a podcast. Your story's so interesting. And I'm like, yeah, I tell that story and then I'm done. Then what else? But when the book came along, which is basically a very pragmatic way to look at the tools of access for people that are asking you, you can hand them the book and go, this is what I'm doing. It's not a cult, you know, it speaks to you and all the things. So I have to ask you this question, Jacquie, how do you get your happy on?
Well, I keep coming back to me, what really, really is me. And that's an ongoing daily experience. It looks different every day. Some days it's running my ass off, staying super busy. And some days it's on the couch with the remote, watching whatever. Some days it's out in nature. And some days it's, you know, it's whatever, but it always comes back to me. And it's really letting all the shoulds, supposed to, have to, got to's, whatever else just fall away. And it's been an ongoing process and reminder. And that's what truly makes me happy.
So what I hear you saying, I think, is you just follow the energy and you show up as you.
Yes. And me is always changing, and I'm still exploring me in my 50s as to like who me really is. And it's not from where in my 20s may have been from a place of lack. This is now, it's like, oh, okay. And what else? What else?
Right. Wow. I love that. That's so cool. Well, I got to ask you a personal question about something I know that your lights you up, are these water bottles.
Yes. These. Yes. Yes.
So for those of you that are just listening on Apple or, you know, whatever platform, Spotify, Jacquie just held up this little bottle, and at the bottom of the bottle is all these colorful little crystals. So I don't know, maybe tell us a little bit about that.
They're Gemstone water bottles. And so I've been sharing those as a distributor for probably 7-8 years, maybe at least. Yeah. And so they totally light me up. And they change the vibration of the water. And it's, again, knowing that we are the creative of our lives, and also implementing support, however that looks. So I find like the different gemstones have different vibrations and they support different things and add different things. So I'm drawn to different bottles at different times, be all in one day, different, you know, whatever that looks like. What has been most fun for me is sharing these with clients and at trade shows. And people will go, I don't know. They're all pretty. I don't know which one. So what I've played with is I'll have a list of, or a row of gemstone of the bottles. And I'll be like, okay, close your eyes. Where does it first go? And they'll be like, there. Okay. And then I'll have them close their eyes and they hold different ones. And I'll be like, okay, do you know, watch your body. Are you moving forward? Are you moving back? Do you feel expanded? Is one hand warmer? Is one lighter? So it's really been fun to invite people to get really present. And it's a really sweet little way for them to start trusting and following their own awareness. And so that's super fun for me. And then when they report back going, I'm drinking so much water, I feel better, I'm sleeping better, or whatever that is, like that lights me up.
Oh, wow. I love it. Which one is the one you just held up? What's that one for?
Right now I'm drinking happiness.
How come I don't have that?
I don't know.
Because even my mug, I don't know if you can see there on my coffee mug, it says choosing happiness.
Yeah.
So one of my clients actually gave, and a good friend gave me this mug. She just walked in. She was coming in for facilitation, I think. And she's an amazing reflexologist. Quick plug, Lorianne Jones. And and she watches, I found this and I thought of you, and she just gifted it to me. And I'm like, love things like that. But that happiness one, that makes me very curious.
Yeah.
So, because I also have an aromatherapy company, and I do kind of basically the same thing. I would do these where you have a booth and people would come up, and I have several, I don't even know, under 40, I think, maybe like 37 of them, even chakra ones. And I'll do the same thing. I show them how they can get a yes or no with their body, or I'll say, well, just hold this one. You don't even have to look at the name. And do you feel expanded or contracted? Do you feel, you know, and they light up when they realize, oh my gosh, I can actually perceive, you know, this blend.
That is so fun for me. Yeah.
Wow. We have a lot in common here, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for asking about them. Yeah. And I didn't even realize that that's the bottle I, filled up. And all of a sudden I'm like, it's happiness.
That's funny. So wait a minute. You didn't realize? Or...
Yes, I'm now acknowledging I was aware. Yeah.
That's what we mean by awareness, y'all. Sometimes we're like, oh, I didn't even think of that. And that's when you're being the tools.
Yeah.
It feels like nothing.
How often do we confuse luck with awareness?
Right. I used to always say I'm the luckiest person I know.
Yeah.
And then finally I got slam basted by, I don't remember if it was Gary or Dane. They're like, what do you mean you're the luckiest person? You created it. Could you acknowledge it? You created your world, that you created your life, that you created your fun, that you created. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess so. But I don't mind calling myself the luckiest person.
Right.
I am lucky that I can actually create.
Lucky with acknowledgement. Yeah.
Sure. Why not? Why not? I love it.
Cool.
Well, this has been an amazing, amazing conversation. I'm sure we could go on and on. Maybe I'll have to have you back.
But, thank you so much.
If the peeps were going to try to find you, where would they have to look?
I have Instagram, so at Jacquie Carter 11. My website is JackieCarter.ca, and then I'm on Facebook.
And she spells her name a different way, you guys.
Just to stamp the uniqueness.
JACQUIE. Yeah, but we'll make sure to have all the information underneath so you guys can find it. And if you enjoyed this conversation, maybe hit the subscription, for whatever platform you're on, hit the subscription button, share with those you sense this could be a contribution to. And sure do appreciate you listening and playing with us. And Jacquie, thank you so very much for being my guest.
Thank you for
you've
having
been absolutely
me.
Delightful.
Thank you.
And I'm delighted that the podcast is the reason we got to connect this way.
Absolutely.
So let's stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you guys. Until next time, get your happy on, right? And ciao for now. Mm-hmm.